I've lost my needle. Oh, there it is. Okay. So today we are going to do French knots and colonial knots. Go play. So first thing we're gonna do is talk about different sizes and technique, and then we will move on to our terrariums. So with French knots, depending on how many strands you use, you can use any number of strands. I'm just going to do 3 and 6 just to show you different sizes. And then depending on how many times you wrap it around the needle is going to determine the size of your French knot. So, French knots, we always start in the back. I have a knot. This is 3 strands. So this is the number of strands. This is how many times we're going to wrap it. So with French knots, what we're going to do is hold this off to the side. We're going to wrap it around our needle 1 time. Keep that wrapped around. We're going to go down right next to, but not in quite the same hole, but right next to the hole. We're going to keep our knot down at the bottom and pull our needle through. Okay. So from the back, wrap it around 1 time. Scoot that knot down to the bottom. Hold this snug until you get your thread. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I have all kinds of things going on here. Until you get around there, and then you can let it go. Okay, so when we do 2 wraps, it's going to be the same, but we wrap it 2 times instead of 1 time. So 1, 2, we're going to go down next to that hole, bring our knot down to the bottom by the fabric, and then pull it through. Okay, so do you see the size difference? These ones are like itty bitty, and then these ones are just slightly bigger. And then we're going to show with 3 wraps. I don't usually do more than 3 wraps because it'll kind of make your knot a little bit funny. It doesn't sit as flat. Okay, here we go. If this happens, there's a knot down by the knot. So you can usually kind of pull that out, and then I usually push this knot back down there. It's a little bit funky, but depending on what you're doing, that might be okay. So let's try again. 1, 2, 3. Down to the fabric, and then pull that through. So there's 1 wrap, 2 wrap, 3 wrap. So let me tie this off, and then we will make this 6 strands. Okay, so we have 3 strands in there, so we're just going to double it over and tie these 2 ends together, and then we'll have 6 strands. Roman. So we're gonna do the same thing, but this time with 6 strands. So we've got 1 wrap and down. And that's like similar size to this. 2 wraps with 3 strands. Slightly bigger. And then bigger again. So do you see, like, depending on how many times you wrap it and how many strands you use, you can kind of change the size. Another thing is wrapping it 3 times, but keeping your thread loose. Hold on. So instead of like pulling it snug and pulling it down to the fabric, I've left it kind of loose. And then you get one of these big puffy knots that's fun to do for like landscaping. Okay, so there is French knots. So let me change colors real quick and I will show you Colonial knots. They're very similar, they look very similar, but the way you wrap it is a little different. Some people find it a little easier, especially if you don't have a hoop stand. Sometimes it's hard to hold your hoop like I was and do French knots at the same time. Usually if I'm working with a big hoop, I support it against my body or on my lap. But if you have a hoop stands are great when you're doing a lot of French knots, okay? Okay, so down here at the bottom, we're just gonna do a few Colonial knots. It always takes me a minute. I don't do them very often, so I always have to think about it. Okay, so we do a backwards C, like this, okay? And we're gonna go up this way, and then we're gonna wrap this around this way. So then we're making like a figure 8 with our thread. Pull that snug. And then we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go down right next to where we came up. Pull this knot down to our fabric and then pull our thread through. I'll do a few more. Okay, so we've got our backwards C for Colonial. We're gonna come up this way and then we're gonna wrap it, this way and make a figure 8 or an infinity sign. And then we're gonna go back down, pull that thread snug. There you have a Colonial knot. One thing I like about Colonial knots is I feel like I can make them a lot more uniformed. So if I'm doing something like polka dots and I want them to all be the same, I usually will do Colonial knots. The way to make them bigger or smaller is to use less strands. So this is all 6 strands and they're all kind of different, but that's because life. Okay, last one. So we've got our backwards C. We're gonna go up, wrap it around, back in, whoop. See, sometimes I'll like set it down like this and do it this way because then I can pick it up. So then I can use both my hands. They'll be a lot more uniformed. See, those last 2 are a lot more uniformed. So they're about the same size as a 6-strand 2 wrap, which makes sense because we've kind of wrapped it twice. Okay, so there's how to do knots. If you want to practice, that's a great way. If you want to have a grid, you can do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 strands. You could do 12-stranded ones, especially if you're going to do them like big and loopy like this. That could be fun. But there is that. So let's get out our hoops. Okay. just don't ever remember what colors I'm gonna do things. So let me just pull up my pattern here. Okay, so I have, this one is brown and this one is the darker gray. So I'm going to do 645 for this one. And this one is 3862. We'll go from there. So we're going to start with the 645. What we're going to do is just fill this space. So if you are doing several hoops, I know some of you are doing like 3 hoops. This may take a little bit of extra time. Okay, what do we have here? I like to use my thread scraps. So this is 3 strands, so I will double it. I'm going to use 6 strands. Because I like 6 strands for French knots like this. It will go a little bit faster because there's a little bit more thread. So it takes up a little bit extra space. You could throw in, like, do some 12 strand and some 6 strand. You could get crazy and do a bunch of tiny ones. I'm imagining this is kind of like sand or dirt or something. Okay, so I've got my 6 strands. This isn't very much thread. Like, I'll go through it pretty quick, but I just tied them together at the end there. And then what I like to do when I'm doing French knots that I'm filling a big space like this is I like to start with an outline and go from there. Okay, so wrap 3 times, keep that loose, and pull it straight. Sometimes I'll do 2 because that one's a little bit of a smaller space. I don't worry too much about filling the space right now. I just worry about kind of getting an outline and doing some messy French knots. Another thing you could do is, if you wanted, you could do multiple colors in your needle. You could throw in some of the lighter gray. I think I'm going to actually do that. I'm going to just spread these out a little bit. But you could add in some of the lighter gray or the white. We're not going to use very much of the white, so if you want to use it for something like the French knots, you totally could. The other thing with French knots is, let me bring this up top so you can see it. Once we bring it up here, you can see like how twisted it gets. So once it starts doing that, if you just let it hang from the back of your project, just let it hang for a minute, it should untwist. I need to just pull it straight because I don't have much space under mine. So one thing, I love using a French knot to fill spaces like this because it's a great way to practice. Like if you want to have like a smoother, like just to practice French knots, because this is messy. So it doesn't matter if the French knots are a mess, because we're just going to squish them all in there. So like that one, I mean, my thread is really short, so that's kind of a mess. But it's not a big deal because it's going to be squished in there with a million other French knots. And so it's not going to be a problem to have that kind of messy. Okay. I'm going to get a longer thread this time that I'm not using a scrap, so we can do some more. I'll throw some Colonial knots in here once I get kind of a base I'm not very good at random. Like when people are like, just throw in some random stitches or whatever. I'm like, you want me to do what now? Where do they go? Where do they belong? So this is kind of how I do random. Is I'll do like the edge and then I'll start filling it in, because that's about as random as my stitches get. My tail is too long. But you see how much easier if you have a hoop stand? If you have one, I recommend you get it out. Now is the time to use two hands. I think when I'm done with this piece of thread, I'm going to do some 12-stranded ones too. Did you say you could mix colors 647 and white? So I'm using 645. But yeah, you could totally mix in some 645 with the white, or do 645 with 647. Like, you could mix something in there. I'm going to mix in some of the 647 with this. But I wanted to get some all dark ones first, and then I will get some other colors in there, just to kind of give it something extra. And the white, we won't use very much of it, so there's no reason not to use it somewhere else if we want to. Oh, one thing I didn't show you. Let me make a really messy French knot. Hold on. Whoa, that was way messy. That I didn't mean to do. But one thing is, if you end up with a French knot that's really funky, one thing I like to do is to go up in the middle or on the side and just tack it down. Let me try that again without... It's okay. We'll cover that up with more French knots. That one got out of control. I didn't mean for it to be so crazy. Okay. That is more of what I was going for. Okay. So if you have one that's kind of a little bit crazy and you're like, gosh, it's huge. Like, I don't need it that big. I like to go out on the outside, and then you can just go back down in the middle and just tack that down a little bit. So then it's like not quite so like big and fluffy and in your face. I like the idea along with different sizes. Yeah. This is meant to be like just like some fun texture, some fun. I don't want it to be too polarizing because I already have two colors right here. And so that's why I'm not going to mix the dark gray with the white here. But you know how there's sometimes that dirt that has like the white, is it like minerals or I don't know, like fertilizer or something? Anyways, that dirt that has like little white specks in it. It's kind of what I'm imagining up on this other hoop with the moss. Okay, and then I'm just going to go through the middle and do some more. My thread is starting to get all twisted. You'll notice like it will just start to be so perlite. Oh, is that what's in the dirt? I don't know things like that. Thank you, Liz. Anyways, just thinking that would be fun. A fun contrast. Haha, yep, helps with drainage. There you go. You heard it here first. Oh, I think that was 4 wraps. Which you could totally do. Let's see, that's 4. It just doesn't sit quite as flat. So you could totally wrap it more. It tends to get more like this. Like it just like puffs up and doesn't sit as flat. So feel free if you want to do that. Whoop. All right, that is the last one I'm going to do with that. And then I will grab some of the lighter gray. I think I'm going to go in with some 12 strands. While we're at it, we may as well just get crazy with the French knots. Okay, so when I'm using 2 colors, I cut one and then I measure out and cut the second the same length. Okay, 12 strands in a needle is a lot. It's probably easier to do one at a time. So I'm gonna put in my 645, my 645 first. And then I'm just gonna hold it down out of the way. And then I'm gonna put my 647 in. And then make them the same length. If I were to do 12 strands with one color, I would just do 6 strands and fold it in half and then tie the ends together. But with 2 colors, there we go. All right, let's check this out. I will do the experimenting, and then if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. I think I'm just gonna wrap this twice because that is a lot of thread. Ooh, yeah. Look at that big fluffy thing. See how much space that fills? Maybe do the big ones first and then go in with some smaller ones. If you're gonna get crazy like this. Well, that's kind of fun. I like the different sizes. I'm liking that lighter color thrown in there. Say it out loud, I think it's time for ice cream. Roman was just in the fridge. I think he got yogurt out. But I told him to go in his room, so if he has yogurt, it is currently in his room. Don't worry. I will check it out before we go anywhere and make sure there's no food. Yeah, that's cute. Okay, so I'm going to come down in between on this edge and just do one wrap with these 12 strands. Just to fill in that space. These spaces are a little bit smaller. Yeah, I think that's gonna be super cute, but my threads are getting all twisted. Okay. Is anyone having a hard time getting their needle to go through their fabric? What kind of fabric are you using? I know I've seen your project several times and I just can't remember what you're using. I'm using the fabric and needle from the kit. Oh, so it's going to be, that's a thicker cotton. That's right. I forgot you got a kit. Yeah, a cotton is way harder to get through than linen. One thing is make sure your French knots, that you're not pulling your knot too tight when you're going down. Like keep it maybe up just a little bit until you get your needle through and then pull it a little bit more snug. That should help a little bit with getting your needle through. Because it is a tighter weave, it's harder to, so you could like push your needle through, keep your knot up a little bit, push your needle down, and then pull that knot a little bit more snug. Because even with linen, if my knot is too tight, I mean, especially with 12 strands, like that's a lot of thread holding on to your needle. Oh, see, I struggle even. Ooh. And especially once you start to get a lot of knots in there, your fabric is full of thread. I'll try that. I've been having problems the whole time. I was like, holy cow. Ooh, I'm sorry. French knots, definitely. Maybe try and do some Colonial knots and see if that helps. I have resorted to using pliers occasionally, which is not super fun. But usually if I let my knot be a little bit looser, I tend to have an easier time. Also, if you don't have a stand, if you sit at a coffee table, it's nice to do French knots. Yeah, I agree. I usually sit with something in front of me, a desk or something. And also make sure, like, if you're starting to twist, let that fully untwist. Because that makes it harder to pull it as well, is if you have twisted thread, which I am getting. Oh yeah, Jana, if you have another needle, maybe try a bigger needle. Back to your room, please. I'm having the same problem and I have the kit also. I haven't stitched on the kit fabric. Maybe I should grab it. I have some left over. Oh gosh. Hold on. Let me go grab some kit fabric. Yeah, like that's a thick, stiff cotton. Let me move this out of the way. See, we just have some like scrap pieces left, but then I can see what you're working with here. Also, how tight is your fabric? Can you tighten your fabric any? That could also help. Okay, so I'm just gonna do some green in 6 strands. Oh yeah, it's the fabric. It's a tight weave. A bigger needle could help. Mine is pretty tight. I started having problems with the top of the terrarium with the dirt. Yeah, that's a really thick, I mean, it's like a nice thick cotton. I wonder, let me go grab a bigger needle and try that out. I don't know what size these are, but...
Mom,
What, honey? No, that doesn't, that's broken.
What? That one's bedtime. I know it. Hey, you almost done.
Yep, go play in Roman's room.
Why are you putting that wool?
Okay.
Putting that wool. Let me help put that in.
I don't know, I think a bigger needle is harder, personally. Roman,
You had that.
thank you. Okay, go take that into your room, please. Okay, let me try a smaller needle. The only problem with a smaller needle is that the eye is then smaller. So then you run into different kinds of problems. Ooh, almost all of them. This needle is really small. Okay. Ooh, smaller's not easier. Because then the thread does not want to pull through. I wonder if I have... It's a tapestry needle. I don't know what size tapestry needle this is, but I think the tapestry needle or the size 5 have been the easiest for me. But it's definitely a thick fabric, so it's going to be harder to go through. I thought this one and this one were the easiest. That's the size 5, and that's a tapestry needle. It's probably a size 24, maybe. And then that one's like a giant thing. Oh, it's over here. Nope, that's my regular needle. This is like really thick. They're all magnetized. So this is the different needles that I used. So that's a size 5. That's, I don't know. That's a big fat needle. That's a skinny one. And that's the tapestry needle. I thought that one and that one were the easiest. But it's definitely, oh my gosh, you're not taking away from the stitching. That's what this is for. Ask questions. If something's not working, then let's figure it out. There's no reason to apologize. That's what we're doing here. We're learning. So, yeah, it's definitely like thick fabric. So plan on maybe some sore fingers and a thimble if you have one, or like a rubbery Band-Aid that will help like grip it. Yeah, that's what I would go with. Oh goodness, I shouldn't have taken this out of this needle. Let's see if we can get them through at the same time. Probably not. If the ends are frayed, I trim them. So they're a little, oh, I did it. Woohoo. Okay, I'm gonna throw in some Colonial knots just so they're in here. And you can see me do a few more. Ooh. What, honey?
When you watch the baby at the wheel, the baby pee.
Oh, okay. Go grab a towel from the bathroom. Colonial knots with 12 strands is hard. I mean, not that it's hard to do, but it's a lot of thread. See, once they're like all in there together, you really can not really tell the difference unless you were like looking really closely. And this is where we had that crazy knot that got out of control. So I'm just gonna do some French knots around it just to hide it. just cover that right up. See, no problem. All right, I'm running out of thread and time. Okay, so I'm going to let you work on these. God, we should have done this Friday so you had all weekend. Don't worry if this is taking you a long time. I mean, I've been talking and doing other things as well, but we're 40 minutes into this video and this is not done. So like French knots are time consuming. So don't feel like you should be done by now. Do some until you're sick of it and then take a break. Do some more until you're sick of it and take a break. I'm going to work on this a little bit more and then I will start working on the one up here. And yeah, I'm going to mix colors up here too. I might throw in some of this combo as well. We'll see. But anyways, work on that. We won't be doing these ones quite yet. So if you don't have this done, don't worry. Like we won't do these 3 quite yet. So we'll start working on these next. So you have time to finish this before we move on. Okay. All right. So we'll be back tomorrow at 10 and we'll start working on something else. I haven't decided what to do next. So we'll all be surprised. But anyways, thanks for joining me today. I hope you're enjoying the French knots. They're fun, and good for practice and for sore fingers. So, see you back here tomorrow. Bye.